Hey guys, welcome back once again. You're listening to the Wrestling with Story podcast. I am Joshua Hale Fialkov. I am a writer and producer of television, animation, video games, writer of graphic novels and comic books. I'm Emmy nominated, Eisner nominated, Harvey Award nominated. I got nominations coming out of my wahoo, guys. That's what I'm telling you. And we're here for What Happened. That's right. I'm here to tell you what happened on Monday Night Raw for July 15th, 2024. I really panicked at the beginning. I really panicked at the end. I didn't know what year it was. So yeah, you're listening to if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, I do hope you have, thank you for subscribing. I do appreciate it. You can also follow us online. You can follow us online on YouTube. We're youtube.com/@Wrestling with Story. You can follow us on Instagram at Wrestling with Story. You can follow us on TikTok and Twitter, both at Josh Fialkov. And you can follow us. We do live streams of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown on TikTok and on our YouTube Live. Again, both of those Wrestling with Story. So please do me a favor. Follow. If you, wherever you're listening or watching or doing any of that stuff, if you could do me a favor, you could hit subscribe. You could hit like. You could give us a review. You could give us a comment. Give us a thumbs up. Whatever the equivalent is in the medium that you're watching this in or listening to this in, what that does is it actually makes it more discoverable for other people. And that means that more people will be listening, and that's going to be great for us. Some just real quick housekeeping. We're going to have some guests on coming up real soon. We're going to have some people who are other creators that I know that I'm friends with, who are also friends of wrestling, and we're going to talk about what they've learned and how wrestling intersects with their profession. So we're going to have some of that coming up very soon. So if you are really irritated by me sitting here talking about episodes of TV that you watch, you're going to get some relief from that relatively soon. I think up first, and he's not going to know that I'm going to tell him that he's going to be first, is my friend who was actually, he's a TV writer, very successful TV writer, but he was also on staff at the WWE for, I think, 2 years. So hopefully he's going to be our first guest on that podcast, so I try it out and make sure I can actually do it. So hang tight for that. All right, Raw for July 15th. So I would say this is like a 7 out of 10 episode, which fits for July, for it to be a 7 out of 10. You know, you would think for how many bangers we have that we're actually Sheamus. That's how many bangers it's been of Raw. So I think when one is just sort of fair or above average, it feels like kind of a letdown. And there was definitely great stuff in this. There was especially the real highlight, again, was Dominick Mysterio. Which, like, when you actually stop and think about it, how weird is that? That, like, that awkward, weird little kid from the Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio segments. And then whenever we would see him growing up and he would just be this weirdo kid. And then even when he debuted as an adult, the thought that, like, the best thing on WWE programming was going to be that guy is just a real head scratcher, isn't it? It's so strange. But it's true, and the story with him has been fantastic the whole way through, and we got a lot of it tonight. Let me just update my notes for a second there. Just correcting something in my notes. So we got a lot of it tonight, and we'll get through it as we talk about it. So let's go match to match. We'll do segment to segment, and we'll get through it and talk to you on the other side. So we opened with Rhea Ripley coming out and calling out Liv Morgan for stealing something that belonged to her. That something was not Dominick Mysterio, but in fact her world title. Liv did not come out. Instead, little Dominick Mysterio came out with a flower in hand to come and beg for her forgiveness. and it did not go over well. Rhea really just tore him a new one, and it was delightful. What was great is that he gets like the heat that Dom gets, right, is so legit and fun. Like, the audience loves to hate on Dom, but simultaneously there's this like pity that goes out to him now that is just so real and so like fleshy, that just feels so grounded and great, and really he's really turned into something special. I'm actually curious when and what will happen when they turn him babyface, because I think they eventually can turn him babyface. Like, I know he's sort of like the ultimate douchebag, but he's got so much potential to be not that. I think he really could do it. I think he really has, like, he's great on the mic, even though he never gets to talk because of all the booing. He's great on the in-between scenes. You know, his acting has improved drastically. I really think there's a lot to him, and I think we are in for a real treat. Talking of which, they get interrupted by Liv Morgan, who is on remote, is what it's supposed to read like. That she is far away to make sure that she cannot be hurt by Rhea Ripley. And Liv cuts her own promo, essentially tearing into Rhea, explaining how this has all been the plan all along, that she got everything that she wanted out of her. She told Rhea that she was going to destroy her, and that she did, and that it was all worth it, because at first she was just going after Dom because Dom was just Rhea's toy that she wanted to take away from her, but then she started to actually fall for him, and now she can't get enough of him. And again, like, Liv has improved so much as an actress. All of this stuff feels really grounded, it feels really realistic, and it feels really, there's no other way to put it, it feels really real. I know it's an angle, and it's obviously an angle because both, as has been talked about to death, you know, Rhea Ripley's obviously recently married. Dominick is recently married. Until recently, Liv was in a relationship that just broke up. So, I mean, it's all an angle, and we know it's all an angle, but, like, that almost makes it better to some degree, right? Like, the fact that they're actually convincing when we know that the reality of it is so far from the truth, I think is pretty impressive. So we go off of that into they start the beginning of Sheamus versus Bronson Reed. But before that match can start, we actually get another vignette. This time it's Dom chasing Mommy. God, I hate calling her Mommy. It's really creepy. Chasing Rhea Ripley into their dressing room where he is shown the door as Damian Priest walks up. And Priest essentially, and he tries to call Priest out for not helping him and not warning him for last week, and Priest is just not having it, right? Like, Priest is just like, dude, I warned you, I told you, and you would not listen. And he's like, he's got a point. And Dom tries to play it off like everything's fine, and it does not work because Rhea Ripley tosses even more flowers and more crap in Dom's face. Then we get Bronson Reed comes out. There's one more. So Bronson Reed comes out. They have their match. Sheamus and Bronson Reed have their match. You know, look, I've talked about my sort of confusion about Bronson Reed because, you know, I've seen, you know, when he was Jonah, which was his name in the Indies, and he's great. I can particularly, like, there was a Brody King, like, he was in a street fight match for New Japan that was like a 6-way. Oh, and I can't remember who all's in it, but I know he was in it. I know Brody King was in it. I feel like it was the War Dogs were in it, possibly. But it was a great match, really engaging, and he in particular was really impressive. And so every time I see him, I'm always like, where's that guy? And I don't know if there's just nobody who lives up to that in the WWE who can sort of roll with them. I don't know if it's just how he's booked. I don't know if he was injured at some point. I don't know what it is that keeps him from putting on those great matches. That being said, this was actually a decent match. He really got a good match out of Sheamus. Sheamus got a good match out of him. The end of the match, after Sheamus wins, and then Bronson jumps Sheamus from behind and is about to do his cascading, whatever it's called, his finishing move, when Pete Dunne runs in to save him. And now this is a tie back to what happened last week, when Sheamus saved Pete Dunne from Bronson Reed, and Pete Dunne was like, "Fuck off, I don't want your help," right? So now Sheamus goes to Pete Dunne and he's like, "Hey man, thank you, I appreciate it," all off mic, obviously. And Pete Dunne like pushes him away and gets out of the ring. Sheamus turns around to go celebrate and wave to the crowd. And then for some reason that makes very little sense, Pete Dunne jumps back in the ring and attacks Sheamus. And then leaves him for Bronson Reed to do his finishing move on. So what we had this like interesting, complicated little character drama that we were going to do about the relationship between Pete Dunne and Sheamus that instead just turned into like typical wrestling heel stuff, which just feels like a goddamn shame to me. Like why are we doing that? Why would we not go for the more delicate, subtle version? Who wants to see Pete Dunne as a like ridiculous mustache twirling villain? I mean, nobody wants to see anybody as a mustache twirling villain anymore. That's just not the interest that people have in professional wrestling, because that's not the interest people have in fiction anymore. Like, we've really grown past that. You know, if there's anything that we've gotten out of the Marvel age of movies, it's that we no longer want simple villains. Like, the villains have to be complicated. And this isn't complicated. This is just illogical. Maybe they'll explain it. Maybe they'll find a way to make it make sense, but it feels weird to me. It feels like a weird choice, not the way I would have gone. We come out of that, I believe we went into another Judgment Day segment. This time it was Rhea and Priest in the Judgment Day locker room, catching up, seeing how things are going, and Rhea asks Priest a very important question. Why the hell is Carlito here? Which is a question we're all asking ourselves. And so Dom comes in and interrupts to beg for forgiveness one more time, and it does not go well. It does not. Rhea Ripley once again kicks him out, and in the insult we get a great one-liner in from Carlito, and that is why Carlito is in the room, it turns out. It's just for the one-liners. It's the only reason. Then we get a Sami Zayn, Ilja Dragunov backstage that is setting up that the two of them are going to get there's going to be with Adam Pearce, that's going to set up that there's going to be an Intercontinental title match, and that it is in no way a payback for Ilja saving Sami last week from Bron Breakker. It was a good little piece of business. You know, like, this story is a weird story, man. Like, Sami, I love Sami to death. I think he's fantastic. I think he's so charming. I think he's so talented. But like, to some degree, he's a little bit of a hollow champion. Because his story is really just, I'm a champion now. Period. You know, I don't really get I don't really get a sense that there's a lot of story beyond that. And that to me is a problem. Like, I think we want more. It doesn't feel like we're telling a complicated, meaningful story. And if we're not going to tell a complicated, meaningful story, then why are we telling it at all? Especially with that guy, because, you know, not for nothing. Sorry, I'm going to reposition myself here and get a little bit closer to the mic. Not for nothing, like, that is what Sami's good for. You know, like, that is really the thing that Sami does, is he tells these complicated, thoughtful stories. And so, like, if we're not going to use him for that, and if we're just sort of telling stories of him being a fighter, I don't really know why we're using Sami. You know, like, it feels like a missed opportunity to not do something a little more complicated when we have somebody that talented. But we'll loop back to that later. Then we got a really great package about Gunther, about his journey coming from NXT and Europe and all that stuff, and being the Intercontinental Champion, and how now, after winning King of the Ring, now it's his time. And, you know, they're really building him up to win, although they don't need to, because it just feels like he's going to win anyways. So I'm curious if they're doing all this building just to have him not win, which would be sad, because he should be world champion. He feels like he should be world champion. He feels like by putting him in as world champion, you're actually giving everybody else stories, because he doesn't need story. Like, what he proved when he was Intercontinental Champion is that his story can be simple and he can still sell it. Unlike with Sami, you know, the story of Gunther is a story of I am a dominating champion who cannot be stopped. And that's the story that works best for him. And any other story that you try and do with him feels a little hollow, because they've really established that that's what he is. And then it becomes about the cast of other characters all trying to find a way to conquer him. So you actually get, like, really good value out of it, because you're not spending time trying to put him over. Whereas, like, with Priest, I mean, every story with Priest is really about, like, how do we put Priest over and make Priest look like a champion? You won't have that problem with Gunther. We come out of that to Zelina Vega cutting a promo about how she feels now that Rhea Ripley is back, and how she doesn't want to get kicked to the side when this new trio of, I guess they're supposed to be like shooters, right? Like, that's the idea, is that they're all like shoot fighters, of Sonya Deville, Zoe Starks, and Shayna Baszler show up and give her some shit. I'm not sure that they're challenging her to a match, but it seems like or if they already knew there was a match, because we come right out of it directly into Zelina's music playing. So I guess that was already scheduled. We come out of that to Zelina Vega, the most underrated, underutilized female in all of WWE. She is so good on the mic. She is so good in the ring. She's beautiful. She's charming. She's amazing at social media. What are we doing, guys? Like, why are we sleeping on this? I don't get it. I really don't. Like, I find it very strange that they just keep not pushing forward with her. And so the fact that they have been pushing forward with her the past few weeks has been really encouraging. And then we had this match. And in this match, she got squashed. And to be fair, it took Shayna cheating for Sonya Deville in order for it to happen, but it still felt like a squash match that just, like, did her no favors. And then they did this really weird thing. So as she's getting her ass handed to her by the three, by Sonya, Zoe, and Shayna, Lyra, Valkyria, Chase, and Carter run in for the save. But Sonya Deville, Zoe Starks, and Shayna Baszler don't move. They don't, like, fight back either, but they just stand there. Like, there's just three people running in. Like, no, like, reaction whatsoever. And I guess I understand having them not be scared. But it is three people coming in to fight you. And they don't even do that. They just sort of come in and like tend to the wounds of Zelina Vega, which is such a weird choice. Like, shouldn't they like run in and just tackle the shit out of the bad guys? Shouldn't they be like showing their teeth? And instead they sort of run in and play nurse. It's really strange. It's a weird choice. It makes everybody not just seem weak, but seem weird. Like, everybody's behaving in a way that nobody behaves. You know, there's a when I worked on, you know, when you work on TV shows, one of the things that I really like is I don't remember what show it started on, but one show I worked on, someone started doing this and it became like a tradition on every show I worked on, is we'd make note cards, and on these note cards you would have phrases that you could use that were shorthand for things that happened. And one of them, they were things like "hat on a hat," which meant that you were doing something that was too cute by two, you know, or I'm trying to think of other ones. I'm not gonna be able to think of them, and this is gonna ruin it. But the one that I'm thinking of is "no person ever," and I would throw that card on the table whenever somebody says something or wants someone to behave in a way that no person ever has behaved. And this would be an example of that, because who does that? Like, you see your friend being attacked and your solution is to like run in and do nothing, and the people attacking her are just like, well, I guess we're done, and they just stand there and don't move away. Like, the whole thing just sort of reeked of like, why is everybody doing nothing? Weird choice, really awkward and odd, and it feels like this is not the first time that that's happened with Jason Carter. I think there was actually a segment, now that I think about it, there was a segment with Damage Control a few weeks back where almost the exact same situation happened, and again Damage Control just sort of stood there like like Jason Carter are just no threat whatsoever, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They should be doing something. So yeah, that wrapped up, and we went into, you're not going to believe this, yet another Dominick Mysterio segment. This one was Dom talking to Priest, and once again talking about what to do about Rhea, offering to help Priest because Priest is about to have tells him that he's about to have a segment with Gunther right before he has a match with Braun Strowman. And Dom is essentially asking, you know, what can I do to help? And, you know, Priest tells him, get your shit worked out. And then Jey Uso comes up, and Jey Uso is delightful. And I'm usually pretty soft on Jey Uso, but Jey Uso is delightful as he asks Dom if they know if now Rhea Ripley is single, and if he can ask her out, if he can get her number. And which causes Dom to go berserk, and he has to, and he gets put up for Damian essentially nudges him until he says that he's going to call out Jey Uso, and they're going to fight. And then Dom runs off to go get that made. It is very, very, very delightful bit. Meanwhile, we then transfer over and we find Chad Gable, who corners Adam Pearce and tells him that he has cracked the biggest mystery in the history of Raw, which is that Uncle Howdy is actually Bo Dallas, which if you're not following along, which would be weird, we know because we've seen it on the show. It's happened in front of us. And Chad knows that Bo Dallas is in the building tonight, and so he tells Adam Pearce that seeing as Adam Pearce will do nothing to punish Bo Dallas, Chad Gable is going to call out Bo Dallas to take care of him himself. And Adam Pearce is like, you do you, bro. You do you. Damian Priest comes out and calls out Gunther, and we have a really good standoff between the two of them. You know, what's nice about this, you know, there's been I feel like Damian Priest has obviously, because of the botch, he had 2 botches at 2 different PLEs in a row. He had the count out that he didn't do at Money in the Bank, and then a Clash of the Castle. He had got his foot stuck in the ropes. He's clearly been struggling to come off as the champion. Like, it's obviously a problem. His promos that he's done against, that he did against, because I think he did one against Drew that wasn't great. He did one against Seth Rollins that wasn't great. So this one was really like you're waiting for it to just, what's going to go wrong this time? And it really didn't. He was savage and good and smart and funny, and the biggest difference, and I don't know what changed. I don't know if it's because booking decisions are already made and he knows he's losing the title. That was sort of my knee-jerk reaction. But he seemed really relaxed, and he seemed really just chill to be there, but not checked out. I think he has a tendency, because the character he's playing is so chill and laid back, to come off as checked out. And this time he felt really engaged. He felt really on board, and he felt like he believed what he was saying. But he didn't feel nervous. He didn't feel like he was overdoing it. He didn't feel like he was overselling. He just felt like he was being himself. And Gunther was savage and fantastic. So good. So good. They get interrupted. That segment gets interrupted when music plays, which of course means that Braun Strowman is coming out. As we, somewhere in there, because they do that the long go to commercial thing, we have a sequence where Jey Uso is cornered by Pierce and told, or he's talking to Pierce and told that he's got a match with Dom later in the night, and he's all excited about it. It's going to be yeet-tastic. Then we have Bron Breakker confronts Pierce about how he's going to have a match with Sami, or about how he's upset, rather, that Ilja Dragunov is getting a match with Sami instead of him, and that he's going to do whatever. He's going to go down there and he's going to spear the hell out of them, which leads to Adam Pearce essentially telling Braun that he's going to get thrown out of the building. Braun says, "Don't you worry about it, I'm leaving." Ho ho ho, what's going to happen? What a mystery. What a mystery. Somewhere else in here, this is where it gets a little hazy in here somewhere. Let me see if I actually wrote it down. It feels like I missed it. There was also a quick segment where Chad Gable goes to the Alpha Academy and overhears them delightfully talking about how they're going to help somebody out with their situation, and assumes that they mean him and his plot to take down Bo Dallas. But in fact, he's wrong, and they're talking about helping Xavier Woods and the New Day out against the Final Testament in the worst storyline of the past year of wrestling. Because, Jesus Christ, the Final Testament is the worst. Just the worst. I wish I could be more... Truth is, it's just the worst. They just have no heat. They have no anything. They just shouldn't be there. This is now the third storyline that they've done, and the third time that there has been nothing. It feels like they're on the fast track to being released, but maybe that's just me overanalyzing. Not great. Chad Gable, however, says fine, he will go off on his own and find his own friends, which, we all know what that means if we've been paying attention, because they've been hinting that he's been working with the Creed brothers. Those nasty, nasty Creed brothers who have never acted nasty ever. But, now they do. So it's cool. It's just needed. It's needed for story. So we're fine. Then we get Damian Priest versus Braun Strowman. And, whenever I watch Braun Strowman, I'm just amazed that he was a world champion, because dude looks like he's just ready to break down all the time. And even he was also playing, he was playing that he had bad knees, but that dude's got to have bad knees, because he just really looks like he's really trucking it. But it was a good, solid match. Damian looked like a world champion. Like he came off like a champion. You know, I'm left a lot of time. When I think about Damian Priest, I'm left thinking about Swerve Strickland over in AEW, and how much sort of they both have had the same problem of not looking or being treated like world champions. The difference is, I think Damian Priest, like, they are aggressively trying to make him look like a world champion. They really have gone out of their way to do it. It just sort of doesn't take. Whereas with Swerve has come off like a world champion almost in spite of their efforts not to make him look like a world champion. You know, like, they keep making very suspicious choices about when to show him and when to let him talk and when to keep him quiet, that just make him not feel like a world champion. Like, there's just hardly anything with Swerve Strickland on AEW TV when he should be plastered all over it. Beside the fact that he's the world champion, he's also charismatic as hell. He is great on the mic. He's good looking and over as like there's no tomorrow. So like that dude should be all over the TV, and instead he's sort of barely there. It's a weird thing, and it's funny that the two world champions are sort of in parallel to each other. You know, I find it to be an interesting coincidence. The end of Damian versus Braun Strowman is Gunther returning to the ring after Damian gets the win, and then Damian and Gunther go back at it, and they fight for a bit, and Damian gets the upper hand, and it's a nice, really, like, again, just you're left feeling like, oh yeah, there he is, that's a world champion right there. Like, that guy actually feels like a world champion. Then we go back to this story with Carter and Chase and Lyra Valkyria as they have a match against Starks and Baszler, and this one does not feel like a squash. This one feels like a real match, and it's a good, solid match. Carter and Chase are real good. The Daredevil stuff is good. Like, they have good rhythm. They, despite being smaller than Starks and Baszler, like, and not as severe as Starks and Baszler, they still feel like they're actually putting up a legitimate fight. Like, they really work. I buy them, which is not usually the case for something. Like, they are tiny. They look like 13-year-olds. But as Kenny Omega proved, that doesn't mean anything. That can really work out into a great match of a wrestler against a 13-year-old. But yeah, it's like a solid. This was, I would say, of all the matches tonight, that one was probably the closest to being the AEW match of the night, right? The just like pure spectacle match. Which, you know, it's nice that it was a women's match that they did that with. Then we got to find out about Miz being shitty at golf for far too long. They really spent a long time on it. One more Judgment Day. Like, there was so many Judgment Day segments, but they were all really pretty good. This one was Dom telling Rhea that he's going to face Jey Uso for her, and her being like, I never asked you to do that, you dum-dum. Like, why would you fight him? He's going to kill you. Which seems like a weird reaction, because Jey Uso's not going to kill anybody. He seems pretty chill. I mean, he's going to fight him and he'll beat him, but he's not going to be like, I'm going to murder you now. That's just not his way, you know. But, you know, that is what it is. But yeah, again, like, just another good segment, and they're really playing the sort of aggressive mystery of their relationship in a really solid, fun way. I have to yawn, I'm sorry. I'm waving my hand, so I cut it out. Long night. Then, after that, Drew McIntyre is called to the ring with Adam Pearce. And Drew McIntyre does one of what might be my favorite Drew McIntyre things, which is where he plays contrite, and he does it so badly and so sarcastically, where he's like, yep, this is right, this is definitely what we should do. He's being told by Adam Pearce that as long as he behaves himself, he's going to get a match with CM Punk at SummerSlam, and he needs to accept that he needs to stop being childish. And he's like, yep, I hear you, definitely going to do that, And then Adam Pearce tells him the one thing that he has to do in order to get the match with CM Punk is to apologize to the referees that he hurt. And Drew goes crazy. And he goes crazy in the best way, like where he is just like spitting truth about how the referees in the WWE suck and they're blind and they're constantly getting knocked unconscious, and how is that his fault that they're terrible at their jobs. Like, really just a great, like, in typical Drew fashion, nothing he was saying was not true. And because everything he was saying was true, you're sort of like, man, he's got a point. He's not wrong. He should hate these guys. Like, the whole thing with CM Punk coming out dressed as a referee, like, a referee gave him her shirt. So it's like the referee's fault that happened, for God's sake. Like, the whole thing's a nightmare. It's just a goddamn nightmare. And ultimately, because he refuses to say that he's sorry, he is once again suspended. And then as he is freaking out after being suspended, he goes to attack Adam Pearce, only for Seth Rollins to make a run out and save the day. And Seth knocks the crap out of Drew. And it looks like, my guess, if I were to guess what's going on, I would guess that CM Punk is still hurt and can't compete at SummerSlam. And so instead we're going to get Drew versus Seth for SummerSlam. That's just my guess. I guess we'll see what happens. Don't quote me. Or maybe quote me. If I'm right, send me $5. That'd be great. I'd really appreciate that. You have no idea. So we come out of that into, we get a little bit of backstory about how yesterday or last week sometime, I'm not really clear on when. Maybe it was earlier today. I think it was earlier today. Earlier today on the Pat McAfee show, there was yet another of the Wyatt Sick6 hacks. And after being hacked once more, another VHS tape appeared, and this VHS tape has been handed over to the Raw. Whoa, my mic is falling over, guys. My mic is like really falling over. Let's see if I can fix that. Let's see if we can put some weight on you, buddy. There you go. The tape is handed over to the Raw control room, and they play it. And first of all, apparently, I don't know if it contained the Raw logo on VHS or if they just transferred it over. It's a weird choice. Very strange. But yeah, so we open, and this time it's Eric Rowan sitting there, and Eric Rowan is getting interviewed, and he does, I mean, this is like one of the best filmed vignettes from a performance standpoint I've ever seen. Really just a convincing, honest, like, I don't think he's acting. Like, I think he's really talking about losing John Huber, or Brody Lee, as he's known in AEW. Talking about losing John Huber, and then how traumatic it was for him, and how by losing him, he felt like he lost half of himself. And then how after losing him, the next worst thing happened, which is that he lost Bray right afterwards, and how essentially he was rudderless and directionless, and he needed somebody to save him, and that somebody is sitting in front of him, and that somebody's Uncle Howdy. But, you know, instead of it being... This one felt grounded and realistic, and less surreal, less like out there, and less like, I'm gonna call it artsy fartsy than the other ones have felt. This one really felt like it was coming from a emotional place, and so I feel like it reverberated a lot more and was a lot more meaningful than the previous ones, which I think is interesting, because the previous ones were, you know, Bo Dallas, who is Bray's brother, right? So, like, you know, having it be a rotunda, like you would Taylor Rotunda, you think it would be, they would have the same sort of earnestness. But I think my guess is that Taylor is so wrapped up in the, like, you know, mise en scène, like that, like I got off French for wrestling. He's so wrapped up in, like, the visuals and the style and making sure that he's honoring his brother, that there's like a slight disconnect. And also, I just think he's probably not as good an actor as Eric Rowan is, because Eric Rowan really, really killed it. The other big difference with this segment and the last one that we saw last week is when we came out of it, they gave it gravitas. Pat McAfee and Michael Cole sat with it, and they sat in the heaviness of it, and they really just like let it simmer. Last week they were like, "Oh, that was spooky. Oh, like they were very like weird and dismissive of the whole, both of the Wyatt Sick segments. They were just very like, whatever, who cares? And it's a weird choice, and I think it was very damaging. I do think they made up for a lot of it this week though. So yeah, very good. We came out of the Wyatt Sick segment into Dom versus Jay, and this was also a pretty good match. I do think Dom has come a long way. I really think he's pretty damn good in the ring. I mean, he's not his dad. He's not even his dad when his dad was young. I mean, he's especially not his dad when his dad was young. But he's really matured a lot, and like he puts on a good solid match. Jay's ready to do the Uso splash when Liv Morgan runs out and pulls Dom out of the way, and then Jay does the suicida and ends up knocking Dom on top of Liv Morgan, and Liv Morgan is so aroused by this that she rolls over on top of him, and the two of them are in a sick embrace. Sick like that kind of sick, not like you sick. When Rhea's music hits, and then Liv once again, she mouths "oh shit" and runs for it, and runs like up all the like out the arena, like over the fence, up the stairs, and just keeps running, and it's pretty adorable. Like she is just like woo, 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 just getting out of there. And then Dom gets back in the ring. Jay spears him. 1, 2, 3. End of the match. Then we get a Dom and Rhea segment right after that. That is essentially Dom. Rhea corners him, grabs him, tells him like, "You don't own me. Nobody owns me, man, dude. But I own you." And it's weirdly sweet, like a really sweet moment between the two of them. And they go off not quite hand in hand, but like clearly with their relationship repaired, at least for now. Dun dun dun. All right, next up, Chad Gable goes in the ring and calls out Bo Dallas. It takes a few minutes, but Bo Dallas finally comes out. As he's coming out, the Creed brothers sneak out and they jump him. And as they beat the crap out of him, Bo just starts laughing. Here's what's important about this segment. We need, more than anything in the world, excuse me while I drink some water, more than anything in the world, for the Wyatt Six, we need to see them in the ring. Until we actually see them like functioning, it's always going to be kind of a question mark how they work. So seeing Bo in the ring as Bo gets us a little bit of the way there, because it answers the question of like, who are they? Do they have to be in the costumes? And the answer is no. Because he's still kind of Uncle Howdy when he's not in the costume. So that's encouraging to me that we're going to get to see them wrestle just as themselves. And I think the Eric Rowan segment does the same thing. Like it really sort of sets us that way. I hope, my impression, I said this during my live stream tonight, which again, if you don't, the live streams don't have a lot of people in them, and I think it's just because I've just started doing them. I haven't been doing them too long. So I would love it if you do listen to this, it would be great if you came to the live streams as well, because having more people would make them a lot more interesting for me. But I said during the live stream, like, I don't know that WWE necessarily knows how it's going to work. Like, I have a feeling that they're sort of still feeling their way in the dark about all this. Like, I don't think they necessarily have a fully fleshed out vision for how it's all going to function. But so Bo Dallas gets his ass kicked by Chad Gable and the Creed brothers for a while, until finally the lights go out, the sound plays, and from the back of the from backstage comes the rest of the Wyatt Six, and the ring fills with fog, and as the Wyatt Six are walking towards them, Bo Dallas continues to laugh. He's like sitting in the corner. I feel like they missed a bit here. First of all, hilariously, as soon as the fog is up, Chad Gable just like jumps out of the ring and leaves the Creed brothers behind, which is just a great little character moment. Just like really like just beautiful and really nice. But like they missed the opportunity to have Bo pop up in the costume, in the Uncle Howdy costume. But it makes me think, right? Like I suspect, and maybe I'm just reading into it because maybe it's just too hard to actually do that. But my impression is that the reason he didn't pop up in the costume, and the reason that he just stays as himself when the rest of the Wyatt Six get in the ring, is that they're trying to imply that they're going to wrestle as themselves, and that they're not going to have to wrestle in their costumes, because all the rest of them are all costumed up, and it's pretty clear that like getting in the ring is a pain in the ass wearing these costumes, because it's like a pretty clear struggle for all of them to just like, as they like all sort of struggle to get into the ring. So I'm guessing that that's probably why, or it is just that they couldn't figure out how to do it in, without it looking ridiculous for him to like woo, 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 and put everything on. That is the second time I've made that sound, the curly sound, this podcast. I hope you're enjoying it, everybody listening and not watching. If you are listening and not watching, just note that I did do the woo, 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 the hand movement to make it feel more authentic. And we wrapped up the episode with Sami Zayn versus Ilja Dragunov for the Intercontinental title. And it was a banger. It was a really good, solid match that, like every match that Sami's in, it was plausible that he might lose. Like, it really felt like, they might give this belt to Ilja Dragunov. It's weird. It's a weird choice to do that here. The match was really good and 50-50, really good back and forth, and Ilja felt like a real threat, and Sami felt like he was getting his ass kicked for a lot of it. And then as we got closer to a decision, of course, out of the back comes Bron Breakker. Bron Breakker does a massive spear on Ilja, and then goes to nail Sami, who manages to fight him off, but not long enough, because Bron ultimately they get back into the ring. Bron manages to escape him. Bron manages to hit a spear, and just destroys Sami. And we go out of the show on good old Bron Breakker, triumphant, and setting up what I'm assuming is going to be maybe a 3-way at SummerSlam. So yeah, I'm interested to see, I think a 3-way with the three of them is going to be interesting to see. I hope that's what we get. The thing they did that makes me think it's going to be a 3-way is that Sami, I don't know that he pulled him in the way, but he certainly did not push him out of the way when Ilja, out of the way when that spear was coming from Bron right at them. So I'm guessing that that's going to be enough to put enough of a wedge between them to create a 3-way situation. And that was Raw. That was all of Raw. That massive chunk of television. I'm curious what happens when they go to Netflix if they trim it down, because 3 hours feels like, I know they have a ton of talent to service, but those 3 hours, especially with the 8-minute commercial breaks or 6-minute, I'm exaggerating, they're 5-minute commercial breaks. The 5-minute commercial breaks make it extremely long. And I have a heightened awareness of it when I'm live streaming, in part because I don't have a lot of chat back. So I sort of am overly aware of when the commercials are on, that I find puzzling. So I do hope when they go to Netflix that if they do it with commercials, which they seem to, they've said they are doing it with commercials, they've said they're doing it without commercials. I find it curious that they would go to Netflix, who's desperate for live, quote unquote, live TV, and then they would do it without commercials. And I don't know how you would do something live with and without commercials. I don't exactly know what that would look like or how you would program it. So I'm interested to see. So, I mean, but I'm hoping that if they do it with commercials, those commercial breaks are going to be 1 minute, maybe even picture in picture. And if you did picture in picture, that's how you would do it, so that the people who pay for the commercials don't have to, who paid to not have commercials rather, don't have to see them, because you would just stay in the picture. You wouldn't go to picture in picture. So maybe that's how they're going to do it. That would be my solution at the very least. And that is Raw for July 15th, 2024. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. This was a long one. Oof. As I said, I don't blog. That would be ridiculous. What is this, 2012? Give me a break. Ridiculous. You can watch my videos. I do short form essays, long form essays, commentaries, all sorts of stuff. You can find all of that stuff on the YouTube page, which is right here on the screen if you're looking. Although you'd be on the YouTube page right now, so that'd be weird for you not to know. But if you are listening, that is at Wrestling with Stories. You can also follow us on Instagram, where there's all sorts of memes and shorts, which is also Wrestling with Story. Then I also tweet, and you can follow me on my Twitter, which is, or X as they call it, which is at Josh Fialkov, JoshFialkov. And then we live stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Twitch and over on YouTube Live, both of which are Wrestling with Story. So I do hope you can follow me. It would be fantastic if you could like, rate, review, thumbs up, share, all that stuff. Subscribe if you haven't, because it is going to make a huge difference into whether or not I can keep doing this. I love doing it. It's the most fun I've ever had doing anything in my entire life. I would love to be able to do it for a living, but the only way I can do that is if we continue to grow. We had a huge landmark this week. We just passed 500 subscribers rather. I'm sorry. We just passed 500 subscribers over on YouTube, and we are approaching 800 followers on Instagram. So if we can keep growing up and away, we will eventually be able to monetize, and we're really, really close to being able to do it on both platforms. And once we can monetize, that means we can start making money. Another way, if you want to support us, you want to help us make money, is we have merch available. You can check out the merch by going to my website, which is thefialkov.com, and clicking on store. That is TheFialkov.com, and I will have a link in the video and in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and listening. We will be back after Dynamite on Wednesday, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you so much, and wrestling forever.